Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Saturday, December 28th, 2024, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside will be mild today, with a high of 66.3 degrees and a low of 48.1 degrees Fahrenheit. Coming up, we'll examine the concerning revelations about Chinese hackers infiltrating American phone networks and the implications for national security. We'll also analyze why California struggled to meet its housing development goals this year, despite ambitious initiatives. Plus, an inspiring story about how innovative technology is helping injured sea turtles recover through 3D printing solutions. All this and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. We begin tonight with a major cybersecurity breach that's raising alarm bells in Washington. Joining us now is our technology correspondent Ethan Parker, with details on what's being called the Salt Typhoon campaign. Ethan?
Thanks, Grace. According to multiple sources, including PBS News and USA Today, we're looking at what might be one of the most sophisticated Chinese hacking campaigns ever detected, targeting telecommunications companies worldwide. During TIT. Just this month, the White House confirmed a ninth U.S. telecom firm has fallen victim to these attacks.
What exactly were these hackers able to access, Ethan?
The breach is quite serious, Grace. According to the record by Recorded Future, these hackers gained access to private text messages and phone conversations, with a particular focus on senior U.S. government officials and political figures, especially in the Washington, Virginia area. What's particularly concerning is that they had the ability to geolocate millions of individuals and record phone calls at will.
That's deeply troubling. How were they able to avoid detection for so long?
The sophistication of this operation is remarkable. The hackers were extremely methodical in covering their tracks, and as federal investigators have found, they took advantage of inadequate logging practices by these companies. This has made it particularly challenging to determine the full extent of the breach.
I understand the White House is taking action. What measures are being proposed?
Yes, Grace. The administration is pushing for stricter regulations through the FCC, with a crucial vote scheduled for January 15th. That's in 18 days. According to White House officials, they're emphasizing that voluntary cybersecurity measures simply aren't enough anymore to protect against threats from countries like China, Russia, and Iran. They're recommending specific measures like network segmentation. And the General Services Administration is currently reviewing government contracts to ensure robust cybersecurity practices.
And what's been China's response to these allegations?
The Chinese government has consistently denied any involvement in these attacks. Meanwhile, the Commerce Department is weighing a potential ban on China Telecom, though that decision will likely come after the upcoming administration change.
Thank you for that comprehensive report, Ethan. We'll certainly be following this story as it develops. And now for our second story of the morning. Joining us to discuss California's tumultuous year in housing is our housing and urban development reporter, Chloe Martinez. Chloe, what were some of the major developments in 2024?
Thanks, Grace. 2024 proved to be an exceptionally challenging year for California's housing sector, with legal battles and funding shortages taking center stage.
Let's start with these legal battles. Which cities were particularly resistant to state housing mandates?
According to state records, Huntington Beach, Elk Grove, and Norwalk were at the forefront of these disputes. What's particularly concerning is that only about 2% of local governments met their state-mandated housing goals across all affordability levels.
That's a strikingly low number. Can you explain what happens when cities don't comply?
Well, Grace, this is where something called the builder's remedy comes into play. According to Housing Department data, 215 out of 539 California jurisdictions, that's nearly 40%, became vulnerable to builder's remedy projects. This means developers can bypass local zoning restrictions if cities don't have compliant housing plans. In fact, 93 builder's remedy applications were filed, potentially creating 17,000 new housing units.
The funding situation also seems dire. What happened there?
The California Housing Partnership reports that over $1 billion in affordable housing program funding was cut due to budget deficits. This had a devastating impact, 46,605 new affordable homes were stalled, and annual construction of new affordable homes dropped by about one-third, or 6,400 homes.
Were there any attempts to address these funding shortages?
Yes, but they faced significant setbacks. A proposed $20 billion housing bond in the Bay Area was removed from the ballot, and as reported by the Los Angeles Times, a $500 million state program designed to help tenants and community land trusts purchase distressed buildings was terminated.
What about legislative actions? Were there any positive developments?
There were some notable changes. The state strengthened the builder's remedy and expanded the Attorney General's enforcement powers. For renters, there are now doubled response times for eviction notices, and rent increases were capped at 10% annually for new apartments built with state low-income tax credits. In Los Angeles specifically, the city approved plans for denser development in commercial corridors while protecting single-family neighborhoods.
Thank you, Chloe, for that comprehensive overview of California's housing situation. Here are some other headlines. A winning Mega Millions lottery ticket worth $1.22 billion has been sold in California. The winner will have the option to receive the full amount in annual installments over 29 years, or take a reduced lump sum payment. In Brazil, authorities have rescued 163 Chinese workers from slavery-like conditions at a construction site. The workers, employed by Xinjiang Construction Brazil for BYD's electric vehicle factory project, were found living in deplorable conditions, with confiscated passports and withheld wages. The workers have been relocated to hotels while investigations continue. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has warned Congress that the U.S. could hit its debt limit between January 14 and 23, 2025. The Treasury may need to implement extraordinary measures to prevent default if Congress doesn't act promptly. In the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, forces are at risk of losing more territory in the Kursk region to Russia. Ukrainian troops have already lost 40% of the land they seized in August, with North Korean reinforcements supporting Russian forces, despite suffering heavy casualties. The U.S. State Department has formally designated American teacher Mark Fogel as wrongfully detained in Russia. Fogel was arrested in 2021 and sentenced to 14 years in prison for carrying medical marijuana. This designation mobilizes government resources to work toward his release. And now for our third and final story this morning. A remarkable breakthrough in veterinary care is giving hope to injured sea turtles, thanks to innovative 3D printing technology. Joining us to discuss this development is our science and technology reporter, Ethan Martinez. Ethan, tell us about this special turtle.
Thanks, Grace. According to North Country Public Radio, this story centers around Charlotte, a male green sea turtle at Connecticut's Mystic Aquarium who's been suffering from what's known as bubble butt syndrome, a condition that might sound amusing, but is actually quite serious for sea turtles.
What exactly causes this condition, Ethan?
The condition typically occurs when sea turtles are struck by boat propellers. The trauma creates air pockets under their shells, making it impossible for them to swim and dive normally. Charlotte's story began back in 2008 when he was found injured in Jekyll Island, Georgia.
And how has this new technology helped Charlotte?
Well, it's quite fascinating, Grace. A collaborative team, including 3D printing companies Formlabs and Adia, along with New Balance Athletics, developed a custom 3D- printed harness. The breakthrough came when they discovered that mixing carbon fiber with plastic powder created the perfect balance of durability and flexibility. The harness is designed with 5 to 6 pieces that distribute weight evenly across Charlotte's shell.
How long did it take to develop this solution?
According to reports, it was a lengthy process, approximately 5 years of development and multiple iterations. They used advanced 3D scanning technology to ensure the harness would fit Charlotte's shell perfectly.
What about other turtles with this condition? Is this a solution that could help them as well?
That's a great question, Grace. The team is currently working on developing a template system that other aquariums could use to create custom harnesses for their affected turtles. However, it's important to note that most turtles with bubble butt syndrome can't return to the wild and require lifelong care. Traditional treatments, like gluing weights directly to the shell, haven't been effective for long-term recovery.
Is there anything being done to prevent these injuries in the first place?
Yes, Experts are emphasizing boater awareness as crucial prevention. They recommend using spotters with polarized sunglasses and following speed restrictions in shallow waters where sea turtles are commonly found.
Thank you for bringing us this fascinating story about innovation in wildlife rehabilitation, Ethan.
Thank you, Grace. And I should note that this reporting comes from both North Country Public Radio and the Perplexity API.
That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 3.5, the Perplexity API, and the Google Cloud Text-to-Speech API. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.